Oh, Natalie, thanks for doing this. This is so much fun.
You must be having a ball just reliving all these memories with so many people.
My wife is so tired of me coming out of the room saying, "Oh, I just talked to so and so. It was so much fun." She goes, "Yeah, I know. That's what you said last week."
But here we are talking at 2 o'clock in the afternoon instead of 2 o'clock in the morning. That's a good thing.
Exactly. I never thought about that. All our conversations have happened when we've been half asleep.
And you were drinking Pepsi or Coke, and I was drinking coffee.
Oh, well, Natalie, I just have to say that you are far too young and vibrant to be considered part of the good old days, but I'm going to make an exception and allow you to be part of the good old days.
Hey, what, 25 years? So I go back there. I was still taping paper scripts and submitting 3/4 tape resumes. So I think that counts, right?
Oh, absolutely. I don't think I've interviewed only a few people who are involved in the film part of our industry.
Yeah. So perfect. Then I'm the kid.
Good.
Perfect.
Oh, you just look like you're loving life now. I mean, I get to follow you on Facebook and with your new career. How's that going?
Oh, I love it so much. It's been, you know me, and so you know how I love just taking care of things and taking care of people. And so this has just been so fulfilling, gratifying. I think my boys also like it because they see me taking care of other people and leaving them a little alone a little bit. But it's cool because the whole sentimentality part of it, of helping people find home, I just love it, Carl. It's
Yeah.
just fun. I get to, my days are talking to people and planning coffees with people and bringing gifts to people and planning events and then telling people you got the house, or we found a great one, or we sold your house, or it's really cool.
Well, I'm guessing in a lot of cases on the good days, you're just bringing this great news to people.
Right. I'm not great at delivering the hard news, and it is tough when an offer falls through, when somebody
Yeah.
wants to revoke an offer, when they didn't get the house, but there's more good than bad, right?
Yeah.
In life, we need more good than bad.
But you've also been in it a few years now since you left TV, and my understanding is it's just been wild and crazy in the real estate business in this area, right?
It is. I just was sitting here, thank God for DocuSign. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But just put a deal together right now while you were having technical difficulties. I just sold this house I'm sitting in.
Oh, and the movers are going to be walking behind you pretty soon and picking up that couch, and out they go, right?
No, but I have an event planned tonight. But this is a perfect example, frankly, of how quickly things are moving. We listed it. It came on Sunday, showings all week. I sent out invitations on Monday for an event on Friday tonight, and I'm going to publish this pending this afternoon. Host the event because they're fun. Open houses I love doing specialty open houses, because to me, the worst it's going to be if nobody shows up. I always have some champagne or good wine, and I always invite my friends. So the very worst, I'm going to be sitting around drinking with my girlfriend.
Yeah, that is a good gig.
Yeah. So I enjoy it. My dad did it for years. That's what my dad does in California. And that's what I was studying my senior year in high school and first year of college. That's what I was supposed to do.
Right.
And so now he laughs that I just took that 25-year ridiculous detour in broadcast journalism,
Well, I remember that it was in your blood because your dad did it, and so it was a natural transition from when you left TV. I know that your skills of being a news reporter and presenter in television have got to be an advantage, or at least there are parts of that help you do what you're doing now in real estate.
100%, right? Especially with the transition. I mean, even before COVID happened, it certainly was, because we're comfortable on camera and we can talk and give people tours. But then especially once people couldn't come out as often, right, with everything going on, I can't tell you how many either Facebook Lives or Zoom tours I was giving for people, especially working with seniors who were, as they should have been, super careful. I would do a walkthrough of the house, and then if that passed, then they would do a drive-by before anybody decided if they wanted to go inside.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so it's helpful. But how often do we hear throughout all of our careers, your skills are so transferable, no matter what you want to do, right? How many times did you hear that?
Yeah.
And it is true because we're just really good communicators and we enjoy talking to people and we enjoy asking questions and learning about them. So especially when you're trying to help somebody sell their house or find the house, knowing how to ask good questions is a really good thing.
No kidding. I hadn't thought about it that way. I guess I was kind of thinking in this, those of us who are reporters and news anchors were telling stories. Now you're telling a story
Yeah.
of a house or a home, right?
So for example, so this is one little nugget, right, of how we think differently. So you can't see it from this camera angle, but seriously, I'm in this house I'm hosting a party at tonight. There are some playing cards stuck to the ceiling at the entryway. And when I came for the first listing appointment here, what's that? And the seller tells me, oh, we used to host Christmas parties here all the time. And we always had the same magician back every year. And none of us ever figured it out. He would do this trick and somehow the card we picked, he'd say, look up, and it was on the ceiling. I said, don't take them off. Don't take them off. I'm going to try and find that magician for the open house. You know what I mean? Because we appreciate the story behind things.
Oh, that's great.
Random, right? What does that have to do with this home? But to me, I enjoy it. And
Yeah.
it's just something fun to talk about and initiate the conversation to potential home buyers of what a wonderful place this is to host gatherings.
Yeah, and when they go away and they're thinking about 3 or 4 different properties, well, I like that magician house had this and that and that.
Oh, and it just has you see these backyards. You're right. Every home has a story. You think about how you would market the house you're sitting in right now and why you fell in love with it. The things that you could share with people now, being the storyteller you are.
Yeah. Does your familiarity or your recognizability help, hurt? Does it, or does it not even matter now?
No, it helps, and it's the biggest compliment. It always is, right? All those years when people say, "Oh, I would watch you," and they say, "I'm sorry," and it's like, why would you say you're sorry? That's such a compliment that you invite me into your home. And I'm sure people still see and say the same thing to you. So when probably 3 homes now, one in Woodstock area, Beaverton, and then Portland area, I used to watch you all the time. We'd love to, they've invited me over because they're familiar with me. And then one of my favorite house, in fact, in Woodstock that sold like this because of this, when I showed up, the 2 daughters were selling mom's house who had just passed away. And they said, Mom watched you all the time. She loved that you're selling this house. So, I mean, that's just cool, right?
Yeah,
She's already invited me into her house all those years. And then I was there. I love that stuff.
That's a great story. I love that. Didn't you, when you first started out, when you first left TV and moved into the real estate, weren't you doing web episodes for your realtor as far as you were kind of helping present things on social media in a professional way for them, weren't you?
Well, I still do stuff. So I do something for Coin called Eye on the Northwest.
Okay.
And so Remax has a partnership with them called Inspired Living that I host. Those are just 1.5-minute, 2-minute segments that I co-host with the president of Remax Equity Group, that we talk about what's an inspection, what's an appraisal, what you should do to get your house ready for sale. So that's fun. So in that respect, yeah, I definitely get to marry, the 2.
You still have your toe back in TV a little bit.
I can't help it. I've been in a newsroom since I was 19 years old.
Yeah.
And I'm not in the newsroom at all. I work with their production crew out in the field. And so it's fun. I don't know. When you do these things now that feel more like a hobby than a job, it's just so enjoyable.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it was interesting when you first talked about, helping people and the joy you get from that. I'm just piecing together different jobs now and over here in Central Oregon, and one of them is working at our golf course at the Blackview Ranch, and it's just basic, simple customer service is all it is, and I get such a fulfilling just emotion from being part of that. I love this place where I live, and I want to be an ambassador for it. And people come up and I lost my golf club on the 4th hole. I'll go get it for you. You know, I hop in my car and I go get it, bring it up. Oh, thank you very much. And I mean, and that's all.
Rocket science.
Yeah. It's what we did before also had this service element into it in this kind of bigger spectrum of the community and the news and journalism. But just these small little tidbits of helping people out without it, you know, without them, you know, hey, thank you very much. No problem. That's what I'm here for, is really a fun and a fulfilling thing to do now.
100%. And I've thankfully been really busy and had a great career into this. I'm, you know, 4.5 years in. And people say, well, what are you doing? How are you doing? I'm like, I'm just taking really good care of people. And then guess what? They refer you when you take really good care of people. It's just really, I enjoy it. And then, you know, it shows. So I'm glad. I know how much I had so much fun. We stayed with you. You made us pancake breakfast. We had so much fun. I run into you thanks to lacrosse and tennis.
Yeah.
And now the boys aren't doing either. So I don't get to come see Coach Carl.
Oh, but yeah, I'm still here. You could still, you guys have got to still come to Central Oregon. It's the greatest place in the world, I think, anyway. So 19 years old in your first newsroom. That was in outside of LA, right? That was in the Valley, right?
Palm Springs.
Palm Springs. Are you? Can I technically? Is it insulting to call you a Valley girl as you grew up?
Well, no, I grew up right there, so I don't always advertise that, but it's true. I know.
How'd you land in a newsroom? I think I remember. Weren't you? You were working at a photography shop, weren't you, or as a receptionist?
Well, no, I was working at a law firm through college, but I was at one point. That's where I met Judd. That's why you remember that story.
Okay, your husband, yeah.
Yeah. And then we had a mutual friend who did the morning cut-ins at the NBC affiliate, KMIR in Palm Springs, Palm Desert. And we just, you know, 19, hanging out at the pool, having some margaritas. Virgin, of course. Right?
I said, yeah, you were in Idaho.
I was just naturally inquisitive, saying, oh my gosh, tell me about your job. That sounds so much fun. I'd love to learn more. So I went in with him one morning to shadow and loved it, and became, you know, that was when you could say, when he could just randomly say, oh, you could probably intern for me. You want to? I said, sure.
Yeah.
Back when we didn't get paid for internships, and I loved every minute of it, right? I did that for 5 months. And then got hired on as a reporter, you know, producer, writer, just doing all that stuff. So that's, yeah.
I have such fond memories of my internship. It was 3 months at KGW in the sports department. And I pretty sure I worked 7 days a week all summer. No pay. I got some credit, some college credit, but there was so much stuff going on I was so interested in. You know, I would have paid to be there.
Right.
And then, you know, and like in your case, you're just learning so much. You're learning on the fly.
Well, and again, that's when, you know, I would intern with him in the morning. It must have been probably from 5 to 7, whatever the heck it was. And then, because that's when they were only doing cut-ins for the Today Show at that point, right? So he just had some cut-ins out there. Then I'd leave and I would work whatever my shift was in the morning, and then I would have school that afternoon and early evening for classes. So I was just, and I was so excited to wake up and do it all the next day, right?
Uh-huh. And so
you kind of, when you walk through that newsroom, you either almost instantly know, right? Do you feed off that energy, or is it a turn off?
Yeah. I remember that feeling. I remember just the first few days walking in that newsroom and watching people, and you know, I didn't know what all their jobs were. You know, I didn't know the difference between an associate producer and a producer and the chief photographer, and of course, I knew that some of the reporters. But just to watch them, watch the process of going through the day, and it ends up being this 5 o'clock newscast. You know, you see them leave in the day, and they'd come back, and photographers, reporters working together. Of course, I was in the sports department with Scott Lynn and Al Keck and doing our thing. But to be so new to the business, and then to absorb all that and say, oh, and there's the 5 o'clock newscast, and it's the product of all that stuff those people were working on.
And then the beauty of being done, there's no taking it home with you, you know, for better or for worse, you're doing it live, and then you're done, and you could go on. You know, obviously there were specials and things we ended up working on that you could take home with you and stress out over, but at the time it was done.
Yeah. A lot like substitute teaching, which I'm doing as well now, is like, you show up in the morning, you got to cram for that first class from the teacher's notes. But when the day's done, you don't have to grade any papers and you don't have to lesson plan for the next day.
That's awesome.
It is.
Come on, move.
Yeah.
I love that.
So
And you have a grandbaby.
that's true. I am a grandfather. Yeah. We have a 1.5-year-old Cal. And the best news of all, Natalie, is that our daughter, Sarah, is moving back from Philadelphia to Portland
Oh, that's amazing.
with her
Does
husband
she
and her
get a
daughter.
house?
Well, yeah, yes, she does actually. I know. Now I never thought about the fact I got a referral for you.
No, but I was thinking, so Luke is a junior, so we're starting the whole college process with him now. And knowing that I was talking to you, and I was just trying to remember, gosh, so much that has happened in our lives since we first started working together. And you were just starting the college search with Sarah. It's crazy. I
You're
remember
right.
deciding, you're just gone to Pepperdine. She just decided on Linfield and everything. And now look she's a doctor, she's a mom.
Oh, go well. And I thought about that too. The first time I met your son, Luke, you had brought him to the newsroom for, because of one of those situations where mom had the kid and, whatever. And Steve Dunn was walking, had taken Luke from you while you were preparing for the newscasting, was walking around the station, and he came down and visited us, Helen and I, at AM Northwest. And here's this little kid who was barely talking. He was a very shy little kid, but Steve Dunn was being Uncle Steve and taking him around the entire station.
Oh, I didn't know if you were going to bring it up. We have some funny times where, the boys were randomly with me there in the studio until they could be picked up. And some of the times that, Luke or Jake would just be doing a great job, watching their little thing or whatever, minding their own business, doing right by mom while she was working. And Uncle Steve would be up off camera next to me, taunting them to come here. And while I'm reading on camera, I still remember it. It was when Paul Allen was going through, Rose Quarter was going through a bankruptcy. And Steve's egging on one of my boys to come on over, and he's trying to climb up onto my lap while I'm live. Again, no video, just like this. Help me. Oh, Steve's crying. He's laughing so hard. I'm sweating. I'm like this. We tell, who was the news director? Mike Roush afterwards. He says, oh, you should have taken that camera shot. You should have shown. But again, that's back 17 years ago or whatever, right? You didn't just show fun moments like that and do that.
What I remember about you went from Palm Springs or Palm Desert to Portland, right? Or was there a stop in between?
Oh,
yeah.
And I meant to stay in Portland 1 year. I had outside my contract up for 1 year. We were going to go home.
Really? How interesting. But what I remember, I was at Channel 8 when you came to Channel 2. And of course, we all keep track of everybody. But we all said, she looks so familiar. Because back in the day, there was that ETV show that was True Hollywood Story. And part of their opening was, crime scene tape and blah, 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 and a news anchor. And it was Natali Marmion from your infancy days. You were a baby when you did that.
I'm pretty sure hair was this big.
Oh, yeah.
This big. But isn't that funny? I mean, how that montage flashed so quickly, and people did recognize it was me. It was crazy.
Yeah, and early on it was confusing because it was like, well, she's in Portland. What do they have that picture? But then, of course, they'd taken that from your early days down there in Palm Springs.
The agent had given them that. I remember I got a call. I was in the KATU newsroom, and someone called and said, well, he wants to know if they can use your image. I said, I don't know. Call my agent. I have no idea. And they said, this is your agent. I said, well, then I don't know, but I'm sure it's fine.
Did you ever get residuals from that?
No.
Oh.
I know. What did I know? Maybe, yeah.
I think you've got a case there. You should retroactively should be able to get something. My good friend Nancy Francis was in. They pegged her. The producer of Benji the Hunted was in town back in the late '80s and watched news and said, "I like her. I want her." And they took her out to the coast and she did the opening news reporter part of the movie. And I remember I remember when she did it, and then when the movie came out, and so she got residuals for a long, long time. I think she used to
Yeah.
joke. She used to joke that that's how she paid for college for one of her kids. But
I'm gonna call them. I
I
don't even
think
know if they're
so.
still around, but I'm gonna call. No.
Retroactive, sure. And so
Yeah.
you came to Portland, and you were thinking just 1 year, right? That's what
Oh,
you said.
for sure. My whole family's still down in Southern California, right? So we thought, okay, we'll go. Even when they called, we're like, Portland. I'd never been to Portland, so I guess we'll go check it out. Um, and we loved it right away, so the job was fun. I mean, I walked into a great newsroom. I think about that newsroom I walked into as a 27-year-old. These are Paul, Jeff and Julie, Paul, Steve. They had just hired Rob Marciano, me, and Katie Brown all within the same week about.
Nice.
Tom Rinaldi was there. Mark Hass was there. I mean, I was surrounded by crazy talented people, so much fun. And then you meet some nice people, you buy a house, and you fall in love with the area, and it's suddenly 24 years later, and I guess this is home.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, I think Portland does that to a lot of people.
In fact, I remember there were always consultants who would come through, and one of the first women said to me, "You realize Portland is where careers come to die?" I said, "What are you talking about? This is a great market. It's great." She said, "No, nobody leaves here. Nobody wants to leave. You just come and you stay. Like, look at how long so many people have been on the air in this town." And I
Right.
started watching, like, oh, she's right.
I always heard that about San Diego. People said that San Diego was the same kind of market because people came there, and that it was California, but it wasn't LA, and the weather was better, and that people never left San Diego once they got there.
Well, Jake's down there now, and I do tend to visit a lot, so I can see that.
Oh, awesome. At least he didn't choose like University of Alaska Anchorage or something.
Oh, no, Luke might though. Luke's like, well, he wants to go somewhere, I don't know, in New York or Miami or whatever. I said, well, you realize if it's not just a 2-hour flight, when I come visit, I'm gonna have to stay like 3 weeks or so.
That is good reverse psychology. You'll have them at PSU or University of Portland in a second with that kind of stuff. So then you say, I'll never visit you. You'll just have to come home and do your laundry.
Right. He might. We'll see. But I can't believe it. I just can't believe these guys, that you're a grandpa, that our kids are so old. I just, thankfully we all had one another, which becomes a family there in the newsroom, and we look out for one another, because it got crazy, didn't it?
Yeah. So I think you began doing the weekends at Channel 2, right? Yeah. And then did you move over to the 5 o'clock side when Julie left?
So no. So I started doing weekends, and then they put us on mornings. I remember Steve Dunn saying, hey, they want us to do more. They want me to do mornings. Will you do it too? I said, heck no. Who in their right mind would want to do mornings? And that's when the show was only 5:30 to 7, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't have kids yet. And so that sounded awful to me. So we did it. And then he ended up, he stayed, his promise was to stay for a year. And then he left and was doing, because I think he was doing a split shift. That was terribly hard shift for him, right? He would do mornings, and I think the 5 or whatever he was doing, maybe 6:30 with Paul, I don't know. And then he left to do AM Northwest. And it was just too hard. Again, still didn't have kids. So then at that point, we left to do the 5, and that's what happened. As soon as Jake was about to be born, so 20 years ago, must have been Paul and Kathy were just leaving. I don't know. It's all a blur, right? But Jan Allen called me in, and she said, we're going to put you on some of these evening shifts. And I said, well, please just don't put me on that 11 p.m. because I'm about to have this baby. I'm going to figure out a nanny in the middle of the night. What would I do? So of course they put me on the 5 and the 11. It all works out, because you find someone, and life has a funny way of working out. So, and I hit all the shows, Carl, by the time my career was done there, because then I went from there. And then all of a sudden you have kids who start school, and you realize the morning show is the best place in the world when you have school age kids.
Well, that's funny, because that conversation you had with Steve Dunn about the mornings when you were earlier is the same conversation you and I had probably about 10 or 12 years later, when when it was suggested they were going to move Angelica later, and they wanted, would you do? And you came to me and said, "Oh, I've done this before." I don't know. And I said, "Natalie, it's the best, absolutely best schedule when you have kids."
Yeah. So once you realize that, right? And I realized, especially once they start first grade and they're not getting home till 3, why would you be going into work at 3 at that point if you have options? So I decided, all right, I'm going to be doing a morning show somewhere. So that's mom's schedule. And so
Uh-huh.
it was great for a long time. It
Yeah.
really.
What big stories stand out in your head? When did you have to be on the air for 8 hours, and what kind of, I mean, because there's so many things that happened during our time over those years. What do you remember?
Well, certainly never forget 9/11. Rhonda and I were on the set together, and I didn't think about this until and then Charlie Gibson,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
GMA, and Diane Sawyer. So Rhonda and I were doing the show, and I think Brad Rake was probably boothing the show and said, "Hey, there's some sort of fire or something going on in New York. We're going to dip into GMA for a minute." So just the way that whole morning transpired, and then we took it back for a minute, and then we all know how it went from there. And so we finally said we're going to send it back to GMA for the rest of the morning, and then just spent the whole rest of the day out at the Red Cross. So I'll never forget being on the set, during those horrific moments.
My 9/11 story was a little different because that was when I was doing weekends at 8, and I was off that morning, and I had driven my wife to the airport because she was traveling for her job, and so she'd be out of town for 3 or 4 days a week every once in a while. So I was driving Jill to the airport, and we were having that husband wife conversation about the kids have this and blah 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 blah. We didn't have the radio on or anything like that, and I dropped her off right at the front, turn around, kissed her goodbye, start driving around, and I turn on the news radio, and you know I think that's right when the second plane hit something. And so I'm in the airport, and I just do this U-turn because I know I think the other thing I heard was no planes are flying.
Yeah.
So I do this U-turn, and I end up parking. I have to park, and I go into the airport. And again, I was driving my wife to the airport early in the morning, so I think I might have had like sweats or PJs on, or. So now I'm walking through the airport before 9/11, when you can go to the gates, trying to find my wife because she's coming home. She's not flying.
And did she even have any idea at that point that?
Oh, well, I found her standing at a TV set with 70 or 80 other people looking at what was going on.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, and then the next week of news is exactly what you're talking about: Red Cross, terrorism experts. Even though we're that far away, and eventually it became the Freedom Flights. When they went back to New York. Yeah, that was huge.
Just those days. I remember Kip Kinkle sentencing.
Thurston High School.
Mm-hmm. And I remember being just so emotionally drained after that verdict and announcing that. And I remember Gary Walker, who, whether he was our managing editor or news director at the time, I remember he just came to the studio because after months, following that and then that verdict, and just being so emotional afterwards, because you were just, even with the 9/11 coverage, anything that was just really heavy that you're just presenting, right? But you're just absorbing it all until you can let it out at some point.
Well, I had that feeling when we had the '96 floods.
Mm-hmm.
And we knew it was coming ahead of time because they knew about how much rainfall in the mountains and the snow melt. So I think the day before we were out looking at the Sandy River, but we all knew it was coming to Portland, and they were getting ready for that. And so I think we went on the air. I was at Channel 8 with Brenda and Dave. We went on the air early, and when that river started rising, and we were on for till maybe noon or 1 o'clock or 2, and then the night crew came on. Tracy and Jim Beneman, I think, came in, and they sent me out in the field, which I didn't have any problem with. It wasn't like my day's over, I want to go home. So I went down to to the Willamette River at the park, and I was doing live shots there as they were building that wall. And then I remember, I think we got off the air at 8 o'clock. And I was exhausted, emotionally and just physically. But I remember walking by the live truck, trying to turn in all the equipment and stuff before I was heading back to the station. And the theme to Friends came on.
Oh,
I'll be there for you. And
oh,
it just, there was just a little lifting of my spirit then, because it was such the show was kind of uplifting and the song was uplifting. And it just kind of, it gave me enough energy to get back to the station and get home before we had to come back and do it again. But you're right. Those kind of stories, you do your best professionally, but once it's done, man, it's a big burden on your shoulder to have been involved in presenting that and seeking out the information, and the pressure of doing it live like we have done for so many different stories. It was huge.
I remember there was some manager along the way who was saying, "You're so quiet when you're at, cut off the set back at the desk. You're so quiet when you're back at your desk." And it's like, unless you've been sitting there and you've been, this and the adrenaline and everything else you've been fielding for minimum 2 hours, maybe 8 or more.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to decompress for a minute here before just bounce into something else. So, but I love when it was for whatever team coverage we had, whether it was snow coverage or fire, something big or something silly, whatever, just the camaraderie that comes, with all these great people who we work with out in the field, in the booth, in the studio. It's really neat.
Yeah, well, remember the great scene in broadcast news where Holly Hunter is in the ear of William Hurt during some national emergency, and she's feeding him information, and he's nailing it right off, but he's nothing without her.
No.
But yes, the team coverage is a really big cliche TV news thing, but when you step back and you think about the team of people that is helping us present that, the producers, the people, but all of a sudden, somebody in your ear says, we've got the governor on a phone for you, and you go right into it and start asking the right questions. But that's because somebody back in the station hooked up with some, media person for the governor and looked at the phone number, and it got to the booth, and the director got in the air, and the producer said, "It's the governor, go." That's great stuff.
People made that phone call happen. I just
Right.
get to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's true. Yeah, we always wish we could give the people who aren't on camera so much more credit, because and then there was so much responsibility of when they work so hard on these shows, and you go out there, it's like, I just don't want to mess up your show. I know how hard you've been working on it. I just don't want to mess up your show.
Yeah. A lot of people ask me if I miss it, and my standard answer is no. And the reason behind that is, I did it. I did it for 31 years. I think for the most part, I helped do it well. I at no point when I see some of these news events that are happening now, am I, God, I wish I was out there in the trenches. I know I wanted to be in the trenches when I was there, but at this point, it's like, I kind of feel like we've handed it off to another group of journalists, and you guys go ahead and handle it, because I would rather help somebody find their missing wedge on the 14th green.
Completely. I say the same thing to people. I say, you know what? It was so much fun. It was so great when it was great, but it was just ready for a new season, And again, I hope that the people who are doing it right now are enjoying it, and they are, so, because we did have a really good time. I remember years ago going to an RTNDA meeting or something when I was in Palm Springs and used to go into LA or Santa Barbara for meetings. And somebody was giving a presentation, and they said, reporters are the only ones who expect to go to work and have fun that day, and they're somehow disappointed if they don't, because we did, right? We would go out and become a mini expert on something every time we would go out in the field, and it was exciting and fun and different every day.
Yeah, it was.
So I hope the people who are doing it now enjoy it and feel that way about it, because it's a lot of work, and you sacrifice a lot, to do that job.
Absolutely. And our families sacrifice a lot.
Yeah.
You think about your kids and your husband, and I think about my wife, how many times that she, had to knew that I was going to be getting up early for snow coverage, and I'd probably be working all day. And when I got home, I was going to be just crashed and wasn't much fun to be around, just because of, and all the ratings period, we couldn't take vacations.
I missed my mom's surprise 60th birthday because it was the year for the Olympics or whatever else, they moved ratings from February to March, and who
Oh,
was in charge at the time wouldn't let me, so I get upset with myself that I wasn't a little tougher on some things, right? That I let them push me around a little more than I probably should have or needed to. But what's funny when you say that, how our family sacrifice, I realized that I needed to have a better poker face and do a better job when Jake was maybe 4 years old or so, and it started to snow. And he said, "Oh no, Mom, it's snowing." Instead of it snow.
the child of a journalist knew snow's not fun. It means mommy's going to be gone all day.
It was so funny. As soon as I heard this sweet little boy say that, I'm like, oh, shame on you. So,
That's awesome. Oh, many of the women journalists that I've talked to, it's really been interesting to hear some of their survival stories. Uh, I hope the industry wasn't difficult on you, but it was a boys' club in the early days, and thankfully women broke in and added so much such a great diversity to journalism, especially in Portland. Did you ever have any trouble when you were in this industry because of just the fact that you're a woman?
you know, it's so ridiculous to say how simple it is just to say so grateful for all the women who went before me, right? And just made me never have to question whether I could do it, or because it's like, of course if that's what you want to do, you can do it. I was, thankfully came along with that generation. Some women have already had done such a great job at this career. I think you also learn, if you're kind of cut out to do this, you quickly learn to have a thick skin if you don't already. And I've never taken myself or situations too seriously. My dad's a pretty witty guy also, so maybe the house I was raised in kind of built me for a newsroom. But I can tell you, Carl, sure, when I think about some of the things that I heard along the way or saw along the way, situations, they would not fly in today's world, right?
Uh-huh.
But it was a different world 20 years ago. And I watched people give as good as they got all along the way. So I wouldn't change a thing. I have some fun memories and crazy stories of, different managers at the time that would call people sweetheart in the newsroom, and just things like this, that, again, that's not going to fly now. But at Market 163 at the time, 25 years ago, nobody blinked. We laughed it off.
You say that, and it reminds me of something. I don't want to be too specific about the manager, but it was a manager involved when I first started. At one time, he was walking down the hallway, and he had his arm around two other reporters who were women. Now he just was kind of walking down like that, and somebody said something to him, and his reply was, "Not now, I'm fondling."
Okay, that's not funny.
No.
That's not equal to sweetheart, Carl.
No. Well, it shouldn't have flied there, and now it wouldn't fly now.
No. But truly never, and I don't know, again, I never take certain situations too seriously, and I just sort of am willing to, like, okay, whatever, certain situations that nothing was ever memorable or awkward. I never once thought that I couldn't do something I wanted to do. How lucky is that? And good job on my parents' part for letting me feel that way and just letting me go for it. Meeting great people along the way who also just would, build you up and help you.
I felt during the latter years of us working the morning show together, we had one person I thought treated you and treated other women in our crew differently than that person treated me. I just thought that your ideas and your perspective were not given the same value that he did mine, and I felt bad about that because I know that was
You know how I learned to look at things like that? I laugh now because Jake's in these business classes when they teach things like emotional intelligence and everything else. And I thought, oh, if only some of these managers we had along the way would have had to go some emotional intelligence testing along the way. They would have never been our managers. But with that said, I watched, I think we had maybe 11 different news directors or so during the time I was there.
Makes sense.
And I started to pick up on, I'm a little slow, but I started to pick up on the fact that depending on what season of life they were in, my story ideas were interesting to them or not.
Okay. Yeah.
So different kids or parenting or whatever stories that seemed ridiculous or not worth their time or whatever. Well, a couple of years later, after there was a baby, and they're like, oh, we should do this story.
So I'm guessing then with our good friend and a man I thought was a good news director, Mike Roush, you didn't have a lot of stories about military aircraft.
I did not, but Mike and I got along great. He was really good to me. You know, he just, he was good to both of us. You know, I enjoyed him as a news director.
He's one of the reasons I moved from one station to the other, is because I had worked for him at Channel 8 and then he was at Channel 2. But yeah, but you know, the funny thing is Mike was really into, you know, military equipment and aircraft, especially. We used to do the air show because that was, yeah. So again, what the decision makers' ideas of a good story can change depending on what's going on in their lives.
Yeah, but he never made me do anything aircraft related. He did make us go out to the air shows, you know, and I enjoyed that, but you're right. Yeah. Maybe I should have done a story of traveling with kids in the airplane. I don't know.
Yeah. I think he also got us at 8 into really big time into the air show with the, not the air show, the balloon festival.
You're right.
And we sponsored that, and for several years we were there live for everything, and that was always in the morning because that's when they do that kind of thing.
Do they still do those events? All the stations? I don't follow, so I don't know if they're still involved in community events like that as much.
I don't know either, being over here in Central Oregon. Well, I'm trying to think of when I came to Channel 2, I was with Helen for about a year or so, and we did AM Northwest, and then Angelica Thornton came in, and we did that for a couple of years, and then you made that. Yeah. They kind of asked you, and you made that decision to join us, and you and I and Rhonda did that show together. 5-6 years. Michael Convery, yeah, our good buddy Michael Convery, and you know, it sounds cliche, but boy, you gotta like the people you're working with to like the job, and that group of 4 people, along with all the people behind the scenes. I really enjoyed coming to work with you and Rhonda and Michael. It was just a great time.
I mean, wasn't it just so great to know? And again, you think about who we had in the booth too, whether it was our directors and our producers, and audio. I mean, you think of Lee and Lynn and Peggy and just all these people who everybody had everybody's back, right? It's like, we knew I wasn't going to show up until 45 seconds before we were live. I mean, just stuff, you know, I mean, Rhonda's still my best friend. Her daughter's my goddaughter, right? I mean, we truly become a family. I see Michael's wife now all the time. I don't get to see him, but I see Andrea a lot. Mm-hmm. We were to have that trust and that respect. I always tell people, maybe you feel the same, the camera doesn't lie. And I feel like people could enjoy our group and our presence for a reason, because we all truly liked one another and got along. And the people where it wasn't easy.
Yeah. And I think, you know, as being a coach, you know, your win-loss record is what it is. You know, in TV, your ratings are what they are. And while we never were number one in the ratings, because Channel 12 always was, I really felt that we put up a good product that people were watching, and our numbers were strong. They were stronger than they were. I think we made some changes over time that made them better. And I think those changes involved us as a group deciding how to do things right, not some consultant coming in out from outside. And so I was always proud of that, you know, if you do that, if they give you a day part and you do it, and even though you think you're doing a good job, the numbers don't reflect that. The bottom line is you haven't done what you're supposed to do, but I thought we did.
I think we did too. I think and you know what else, no matter what the numbers show, I think I know whoever our managers were along the way, they knew they didn't have to worry about our team on the air. You know, they knew we were going to put on a good show, that we were going to be solid, whatever happened, breaking news, they had a team they could count on, you know, and that was nice to be, again, working with so many people who they knew you were going to lift one another up.
Yeah. And not a lot of egos, not a lot of tantrums. None that I remember.
None.
And
No good gossip, no good stuff.
there were no affairs, there were no stabbing in the back, none of that. So what do you remember about when that ended? which involved, I was the first to go.
And well, maybe a little jealousy, because you were in a position that you could say, I don't think so, bye. I wasn't.
I'm sorry.
But, you know, I remember going through that though, and possibly having another option to figure something out. And you're like, absolutely, do it. Absolutely. And then it just wasn't quite right. Things got crazy on the backside of that. So I, you know, had to stay and everything else, but it got messy, right? But again, I watch this with every transition in life. I feel like things need to get messy, maybe to give you the courage to go, because when it's comfortable, it's too easy to stay. Mm-hmm. So to help you emotionally kind of get over something, maybe that's why it has to get messy and difficult, so it's easier to walk away.
Yeah, and in my case, in that situation, it was, and I do realize that I was in a different part of my life than you were, and was able to do that. I don't mind telling the story, and I've by the time this airs on our podcast, I will have told it in another episode. But you know, they came to us with this brilliant idea that we were supposed to come to work 2 hours earlier than we were, and by the way, that was going to be camera ready, which is another, you know, that's 45 minutes earlier, whatever. And you know, the idea
didn't have a good reason, just because.
Well, I think the reason, which came from, you know, the new owners through a news director who wanted to impress the new owners, was, well, Carl and Natalie can then be more involved in the show and writing and making decisions, which that's somebody who doesn't understand how a morning show works. Is, you know, the producer overnight starts regenerating what needs to be regenerated and starts stacking a show. And then about 4 o'clock, news starts happening, you know, around the town or around the nation. And while you and I are doing that 4:30 to 5 o'clock part, which is a lot of what was on yesterday at 11 o'clock, then they start cranking out the news. You know, we would have been there for 2 hours sitting there doing nothing, because nothing's happening anyway. And
I mean, for a while, you remember when those morning shows just used to be the same half hour recycled.
Right.
Every hour and a half or 2 hours.
Which ours wasn't, and the others eventually on the other stations weren't. You know, there were people behind the scenes recreating a new newscast from 5 to 6 o'clock that we had not even seen when we got in at 3 o'clock, right, because everything had changed. And so I just said, I'm not coming in at that hour. And it was said to me, well, you have to. I said, no, I don't. What are you going to do if I come in late? Fire me? Because that's what I'm doing. I'm leaving. But I think that, you know, and so we worked out an arrangement so that I would leave. And thankfully they were understanding enough that they gave me one extra day from when they wanted me to leave. And I said, I need to be on one more day because Natalie's going to be on vacation. I want Natali to be here when I leave. And then Lincoln Graves, who I love, the man, and I think he's done I'm glad Portland has him as a journalist, took over for a while, but they were searching for the big replacement, which for a news director is always, you know, it's like, I get to go by the present. It's my thing. And they, as far as hitting the nail on the head with that replacement, they couldn't have missed any farther, could they have, Natali? I'm going to make you say something about that replacement.
No, you're not. Let's just focus on how fun Lincoln is.
Well, it wasn't Lincoln. It was the guy that they brought in to move after Lincoln.
I'm clear on what you're talking about.
Okay.
I will tell you, and that kind of goes back to where I say we've all worked with people where it wasn't always so easy, right? And a little bit awkward. And Lee, our director at the time, saved me so many times when there were some random suggestions on where we should stand and what we should do. And, you know, he'd be like, let's not do that. That's not going to look best, or that's not going to work, because what a disaster that was. What a disaster. And thankfully it was short-lived.
Yeah. Well, and that's what's interesting is that, we could say all we want about that situation and nobody would know the difference because nobody knows who that was. It happened. It was over so fast. It was very uncomfortable for you guys.
It was.
And it was, I can't.
One of those no-brainers, like, why didn't Lincoln just stay for the whole time? I mean, he clearly should have just
Yeah.
permanent replacement.
Yeah. Because a news director had a toy and that was there. Anyway. And again, you could not have missed the nail head any farther than they did. It was like they hit it on the opposite side and they hit it with a skill saw. But the best part of that story is that when that person came in and they told him the new starting time, he said, "I'm not coming in at that hour." And you never had to.
You never had to. You never had to. And then I will tell you though, so I'm like, well, then I'm going to keep coming in later too. And boy, did I get a talking to one morning when they decided I should still be coming in at 2:30. So that was
even though the other guy wasn't?
Near the end. Yeah, it was, yeah. Well, at that point, once he was gone and Lincoln started coming back again, it just got messy. And thankfully, I've forgotten all about it until you're talking about it now. But again, you wish I suppose I wish I'd have had more of a backbone through a lot of it. But at the same time, the responsible one on this shoulder was like, gotta keep it going, gotta keep working.
Yeah, I think I probably get more joy out of that story than you do because I
you
got
didn't live it.
Yeah, I wasn't there. I wasn't there for the painful part. Oh.
Yeah, those were some things. Those anyway.
Yeah. Well, I did mornings for 18 years out of my last 23 or 24. And it was a hard grind, but what made it better was the schedule was good for the family and the people that you were going through it with.
100%. But again, mornings are tough enough without being with a good group of people. So when one person kind of throws everything out of whack, then it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
It's not fun. And it's fun when it's a great schedule when the kids are little, but all of a sudden, if I could get them to bed by 8, then great. But all of a sudden, as they're getting older and they're staying up till 9, they're staying up till 10, and you're not sleeping. So, yeah. But then it was time for a new schedule. So it all worked out.
Yeah, you did a little bit more. You went back again where you came from in the 5 o'clock, whatever, for a while before it was your turn to make that decision to move on, right?
Yeah, once my contract was up, Sinclair was doing whatever they were doing, and so my number was up, and so I say, I would have never had the courage probably to walk out on my own. Again, this responsible. So I'm just I drove away from there, Carl, just saying, all right, God, where do you want me next? Not meant to be there anymore. It was just, again, it was a good thing.
Yeah. And look where you landed in a place that you're perfect and you're loving. So when you take that step, whether you take it on your own terms or somebody kind of pushes you out the door, you find another place.
Again, because when you're comfortable there, it's just too easy to sign the next contract. It's hard to go find something else and figure out to leave. That takes work. That's stressful, right? I guess I'll just stay. But it was fun. And to have the flexibility in my life now that, again, to not have to ask permission to go see my kid for a night or to, do stuff. Holy smokes.
No kidding. Well, let's see. I had, I think, 5 TV wives. Brenda, Nancy, Helen, Angelica, and you, of which I have great feelings for all of you. So I'm so happy that just the serendipity of decisions and stuff like that had me land at KATU, which I loved, and then to become a coworker and a friend of yours was just what a great joy. So I'm so happy that worked out that way, and you couldn't plan it; it just happened.
So sometimes news directors make good decisions putting people together.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, very good.
I give them some credit.
Awesome.
There were a lot of good ones in there.
Well, I love chatting with you, Natali, and I'm glad that we still can connect where we connect. And you know that you're always welcome here at our beautiful place in Black Butte Ranch.
You're so great. I love that you're doing this. I love getting to see faces and hear these stories. So thank you for including me and your people that you were talking to, and tell Jill I said hello.
We will do that. We will do that. And we'll see you down the road.